making a motion that will be for a resolution that should be pretty familiar with the rest of council. Mr. Zayek made this motion, I think, about 6 months ago. And I will read it for the record. It's a little lengthy, but I think provides important background as we discuss. Whereas the County Council has determined that the George W. Hill Correctional Facility is operated under the control and supervision of the Delaware County Board of Prisons, which consists of 3 persons appointed by the Delaware County judges and 2 persons appointed by the Delaware County Council. Whereas the jail is owned by Delaware County and is funded through appropriations by the County Council. Whereas the Prison Board is appointed and granted authority to operate the jail pursuant to a statute passed by the Pennsylvania Legislature in 1839. 1838 PL 10 enacted February 1st, 1839, and amended to refer to Delaware County following the division of Chester County into Delaware and Chester counties. In 1866, PL 588 enacted April 11, 1866. Collectively, that's the 1839 Act. At a time when prisons were operated as workhouses and were largely economically self-sustaining. Whereas the 1839 Act states that the Prison Board, referred to as the Board of Prison Inspectors, is authorized to apply to the county for funding, and, quote, if it shall appear reasonable, and that the accounts of said inspectors are properly kept and adjusted, the commissioners shall draw an order on the treasurer of said county for such sums as may be necessary to satisfy such demands, end quote. Thereby suggesting that the funding of the jail is discretionary on the part of county council and dependent upon a review of prison accounts. Whereas Prison Board does not maintain accounts and requests that the County Council fund the operations of the jail in advance based on a contract with a third party that has not been audited in apparent violation of the 1839 Act. Whereas the 1839 Act provides for prisoners to be maintained in solitary confinement in a manner consistent with the, quote, Philadelphia model of prison operation that was prevalent prior to the Civil War. Whereas the jail does not maintain all prisoners in solitary confinement at the Prison Board, and the Prison Board in operating the jail in accordance with many state and federal statutes and regulations adopted since the 1839 Act, regularly disregards the statute that authorizes its existence, but was never expressly repealed. Whereas the Pennsylvania Legislature has repeatedly updated its statutes, providing for the operation and inspection of county correctional facilities since 1839, including, most recently, in 2009, Pennsylvania Legislature Services Act 2009-33, effective on October 13, 2009, as amended in the codification of the Pennsylvania Prisons and Parole Code. This is referred to as the Modern Code. Whereas Section 1723D of the Modern Code provides that counties governed by home rule charters who were not subject to the Modern Code could elect by resolution of the governing body to be governed by the Modern Code and establish a county jail oversight board made up of 1, the county chief executive, 2 judges of the Court of Common Pleas, one of whom shall be the president judge or his designee, who shall be a judge, and 1 judge appointed by the president judge. 3, the county sheriff. 4, the county controller. 5, the president of county council or his designee. And 6, 3 citizen members meeting statutory criteria appointed by the county executive with the approval of county council for 3-year terms. And whereas county council has determined that the antiquated 1839 Act does not allow for sufficient oversight or public accountability of the jail operations, and that the funding mechanism in the 1839 Act does not adequately allocate financial responsibility for the jail. Whereas the county council has concluded that it is in the best interests of the county to elect to cause the jail to be governed pursuant to the modern statute, and to dissolve the prison board and implement a county jail oversight board. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the County of Delaware hereby elects to be governed by Subchapter B of Chapter 17, the County Correctional Institutions of the Title 61 of the Pennsylvania Consolidated Statutes, as provided for in 61 PACS Section 1723D. This election is effective as of, and this is up for discussion, but I would say June 30th, 2019, the effective date. As of the effective date, this prison board shall be dissolved and the County Jail Oversight Board, provided for in 61 PACS Section 1723 B and C, shall be established. The county executive is directed to A, solicit resumes from citizens and to nominate 3 appointees meeting the requirements of 61 PACS Section 1723C for approval by the county council on or before the effective date, and B, advise the president judge of the Delaware County Court of Common Pleas of the adoption of this resolution and the effective date, and the requirement that the president judge designate a second judge of the Court of Common Pleas and at his discretion a second designee judge of the Delaware County Court of Common Pleas to serve on the County Jail Oversight Board. And C, notify the other elected officials of the county of their obligation to serve on the County Jail Oversight Board. And finally, D, establish a schedule of meetings for the County Jail Oversight Board for the remainder of the 2019 calendar year that complies with the modern code. 5, the County Jail Oversight Board shall meet for its organizational meeting within 15 business days of the effective date. 6, all actions of this council and of the authority taken in conformity with the intents and purposes of this resolution are ratified, confirmed, and approved in all respects. And finally, number 7, all resolutions or parts of resolutions insofar as such shall be inconsistent herewith shall be in the same expressly are repealed. Duly adopted by the County Council in the County of Delaware, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, in lawful session duly assembled this first day of May 2019. I know it's a mouthful. I just want to say really kind of what, in short form, what that is.
So you make the motion to approve that?
I'm making the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I really said in a whole lot of words is to create an alternative form of oversight in the prison that is far more widely represented. Currently, we have 5 people who are appointed by county council, 3 by the president judge, 2 by county council, and this is a carryover from some of our conversations earlier, but really don't have what I would think to be the ideal background in terms of oversight. What we've seen over the course of the year has been what I would say a far short of what we would expect in terms of oversight of such an important part of the county government. Most recently, at the last prison board meeting, we had the culmination of what was a 14-month process to examine the merits of having our prison run privately versus publicly. That process started off, I would say, in far from the ideal circumstances. We didn't receive the contract to go with the Phoenix Group until after it was signed. Compare and contrast to how we ran the RFP process for the examination of how public health is run in this county. Compare and contrast to how we ran the RFP process for someone to look at the risk assessment for the pipeline. Instead, we received a consultant that was selected without any public examination of alternatives. We have no idea who else was looked at. We had no opportunity for the public to opine on what the scope of work would be for this study. And during the course of the 14 months or so since that time when they were hired, there were repeated updates saying that the primary reason for delay was that they couldn't receive the information they were asking for from Chester County or Montgomery County. When the study finally came out, in my opinion, it was a complete waste of taxpayer money. It went significantly over budget, and the primary takeaway from it was that we as a council should not take any basis for use of the numbers that were provided, because primarily GEO didn't want to cooperate. That's something that had we known about on county council at some point during the last year, had the prison board taken action during the course of an RFP process in which GEO was the incumbent and had what ended up being over $250 million at stake. Don't you think we could have put some pressure on GEO to actually cooperate so that we could have had a study that was useful? I bring this up not to get into the private versus public discussion today, but I talk about it because in terms of governance of such an important part of county government, the fact that taxpayer money was spent in such a useless manner and a study that really could have been of help to us was rendered useless because of the absence of oversight. That's a problem. We have the opportunity to change that with a majority vote today, to put in oversight that has direct oversight by county council, by the relevant elected officials in county government, and 3 people appointed from the community who have relevant experience. The last thing I'd really say is it's very easy to think about prison as something that's out of sight and out of mind. And that's how it's basically been run in Delaware County for a very long time. Prior to last year, there was no video recording. It took months to allow the public to actually do so, which is a bright line breach of the Sunshine Act, to allow people to record public meetings and public boards. And the folks who are in our custody, this is one of the most sincere and important responsibilities that we hold. This is an incredible opportunity. We have people who are quite often dealing with a drug addiction issue, a mental health issue. This is a situation to disrupt a lifestyle that has put them in a bad place. We can do so. Or we can put them in a position where their involvement with the criminal justice system gets them stuck in a perpetual, life-altering, for a negative, cycle of incarceration. This is a population that isn't maximum security prison. This is a county jail. These are people who are facing up to 2 years of sentence. These are people who need rehabilitation, not over-incarceration. This is our opportunity to make governance one that puts far more direct responsibility to the elected officials. So I'll stop at that.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
I guess I'll offer a couple of comments. I spoke about this quite a bit last November, I think it was, when this was raised previously. I'd like to underline the fact that what's before us today is not a decision on whether or not the prison should be run by a private operator or whether it should be run by the county. What's before us today is who should have oversight of this prison. This is about good governance. Right now, as currently constructed, we have a prison board that spends 30% roughly of our tax dollars and does so with no checks and balances on it. We've been told that if we don't approve the budget, that we run the risk of running afoul of this 1839 Act. We have instances where the prison board spent $870,000 at the end of last year, and they were able to do so without consideration of their budget because they had extra money in the budget, so they could do with it what they wanted. So they spent $750,000 on legal bills to create an RFP. They spent $120,000 to hire the Phoenix folks to do their report. Maybe those were good ideas, maybe they weren't good ideas, but the fact of the matter was those decisions were made by a prison board that is not answerable to the public. The public can come in to our meetings and speak to us about their issues, and then they can vote for us, or not, as the case may be, when we're up for election. That doesn't hold true for the prison board. So I would contend this is just an issue about basic good governance. And one of the points that Mr. Madden made with regard to the Phoenix report that sort of highlights why this is so troublesome is the fact that throughout the year, as Mr. Madden said, we said, where's the Phoenix report? Where is the Phoenix report? When is this going to be done? When can we get an objective analysis of public versus private before this contract is up? And we were told repeatedly that they're having trouble getting information from neighboring counties. Never once were we told that they were having trouble getting information from GEO. Had we been told they were having trouble getting information from GEO, we on county council could have subpoenaed GEO and gotten that information, presumably. Now, GEO may have fought that subpoena, and I'm not sure what the result of that would have been, but I feel fairly confident that we could have, as county council, taken great steps to getting the information from GEO that would be necessary to complete the Phoenix report. But instead, we only found out that GEO was the offending culprit after the Phoenix report was done, and after they published something that in it, Phoenix said you should not rely upon this report for any decisions because we didn't have enough information to really make the report. So,
And after GEO's contract was reviewed.
and after GEO's contract was reviewed. So I would encourage council to adopt this resolution to bring Delaware County into a modern way of governing our prisons, to allow the public to have more and better insight as to how our prisons are run. And I would note that I know one of the issues that was raised when we brought this resolution forth last November was that there wasn't enough time to consider it. They hadn't had enough time to consider it. Maybe there would be some objections to it. And Mr. Madden went and did some work to try to figure out is this resolution legal? Might there be any impediments to passing this resolution? And my sense, Mr. Madden, was that in your opinion, you felt that the county was on firm ground in passing this resolution. Is that a fair? I shouldn't put words in your mouth. Maybe I'll just turn it over to you. How do you feel about the legality of us passing this resolution and its enforceability?
I think you've stated it correctly.
Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize for putting words in your mouth. But so I hope that council has now had time to consider this issue and has had the benefit of our solicitor's opinion that this is in fact a legal and appropriate way to move forward, and I would urge that council adopt this resolution.
Thank you. Is there further discussion?
One thing that I think may have been, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to mention two items that are of concern to me. I certainly have been in the conversations and aware of the issues surrounding the prison, as we have all been very involved over the last few months. And I believe that they do warrant conversation and to ensure that we have the best possible services being provided. There are two things that concern me about approving and adopting ordinance today. I'm not saying that I'm opposed to doing that, but there are two things that concern me doing that on the spot today. The first one is just an awareness for our president judge. Although council holds this ability to make this action, I'm not sure we have had any conversations with our president judge. The county has had a great relationship with our courts in the past, and regardless of how the prison is managed today or in the future, it would be of concern to me that our president judge has an opportunity to have some comments and input into hearing of this discussion before it's enacted by county council at a meeting. And then the second one is more a matter of protocol for our meetings. This is an item that is not on our agenda, that is being added. And I think we've done a really good job in the past of not just adding agenda items and making a decision on a council meeting date. I appreciate working in that fashion and not just adding things on the fly, and not that this was on the fly, but where that could occur. And I would just encourage us to continue using an appropriate way to put items on the agenda so that there is acknowledgement in the community, that individuals are aware of it, and that we are able to communicate that effectively without having items that come up week after week that are a surprise to one or another member of council.
And just, Ms. Moran, I'll take part of the blame on that. I know Mr. Madden had it. We did discuss it on Monday, I guess.
Last week.
Well, you indicated you were going to bring something up, and then Monday you asked me to put something on the agenda, and I did say I would.
I did so because it wasn't on the rough draft agenda on Friday.
Yeah, and that wasn't the request, but I will say that from my standpoint, I have spoken in the past in regards to the governance of the prison that, you know, that people who have been involved in the system as stakeholders recognize that there are multiple stakeholders in our criminal justice system, and that all those pieces work together in order to make decisions and make the prison run well. I presume some of this, why it comes up today, is because we had the issuance of the Phoenix report, and I understand people may disagree or don't like the results, you know, that indicate from an economic and a qualitative standpoint, the Delaware County Prison is better than most and almost all in regards to the services it provides. And I understand for groups and people that are opposed to having a prison, that, you know, their reaction to receiving that report and the results of that report, they don't like that, and we do this. My position today, as it has been before, is that I'm not opposed to altering the governance structure to include more of the stakeholders in our criminal justice system. However, we have to talk to the people in the criminal justice system, those stakeholders. For the people that are at this table and otherwise, that's what I have said. Apparently, you know, that advice is ignored or not pursued, and we, you know, just want to do the bull rush on the courts in order to try to, you know, alter the structure. I'm in favor of discussing this with the stakeholders in the criminal justice system, with our Criminal Justice Advisory Board, with Judge Kelly as we've grown. We've got a majority of the members that are appointed are by the courts. And if people have an understanding of the criminal justice system, you would understand why the courts are an integral part of the operation of the prison. So I'm not supportive of the resolution today. I'm not saying that I'm against altering the composure of the board or the governance of that. You know, but once we've had the opportunity, and if people haven't done it so far, I will take it to the criminal justice stakeholders and discuss it with the courts and with the criminal justice board in order to see what may work best for the county.
I didn't have the luxury of knowing this resolution was going to be brought up today. I'm going to agree with Mr. McLean, or Chairman McLean, and Ms. Madden, that I do not want to give the bum rush to President Judge Kelly. I do not want to give President Judge Kelly the bum rush, taking away some of his power without giving him that heads up. I don't think I'm necessarily against changing the governance of the board, but I'm not comfortable rushing with this today until we make sure all the stakeholders are aware of what's going to go on and what the potential ramifications are of us moving forward.
I'd just like to note a couple things. Number one, as it relates to discussion with the President Judge. We brought this resolution up 6 months ago. I have certainly talked to Judge Kelly a number of times prior and post about many issues with regards to criminal justice and the management of the jail. And I think everyone else on County Council has had that opportunity. I will also mention you, Mr. Chairman, you brought up the Criminal Justice Advisory Board. I think that's a tremendous, in theory, location for a conversation of this to take place. I have asked President Judge Kelly and yourself to be invited to be a part of that Criminal Justice Advisory Board countless times since the time I first started on County Council, and I have been rejected repeatedly.
That's not true.
I have
Absolutely.
I have asked you to be a part of it, and I have not
You're
been.
entitled to your opinion, but not your own set.
Okay, well, we can debate it, but that's the case. And look, I will say I welcome the President Judge's input in terms of how such a transition would take place. I welcome the input of anyone who's involved with the criminal justice in Delaware County or elsewhere to have a say in how this goes on. But the decision-making, the responsibility for how the jail is structured in terms of oversight unilaterally sits with County Council. We are unique in this structure. Every other county does not have this. No other county has such an unelected independent board that oversees the prison board. The fact that we continue to stay in that role is something that unilaterally sits in the hands of County Council. The other thing I just want to mention, I think I glossed over it, but I think it's incredibly important. This isn't just about oversight of the prison from day to day. What is extremely unique to how the prison is run here, versus other departments and versus other counties with regards to the prison board is that we hand over to this prison board that is unelected a blank check for 30% of our budget in terms of how they decide what they do with the $50 million they're given. It unilaterally sits in their hands. That makes no sense. Why is it that every other division of county government, any contract over $25,000 has to be approved by this council, and yet we think something as important as prison management, we're going to hand a blank check over to the prison board. That structure would end immediately by opting into this alternative model. So I appreciate the desire to be as informed as you can before making such a vote, but we've had 6 months to discuss this. You've had 6 months to do whatever research you wanted to, have any of the conversations you thought were necessary with Judge Kelly or anyone else before making such a vote. We've made mention publicly and privately about the fact that this was going to come up again. We should be prepared for today. So to vote no on this, I think is inexcusable.
Well, that's to answer you, that's your opinion. And, you know, I've encouraged you to bring it to the stakeholders, and to come here today and say, well, the reason I didn't do that is I wasn't invited to a meeting, I think is an issue. So, you know, is there any further
I take that
discussion?
to mean that I will get a schedule of when the meetings occur and an invitation to attend.
You can attend anytime you
I don't
like.
know when they occur.
Look,
Where?
look on the website, go ask somebody, don't just sit up here and point fingers.
I guess I would offer one. I appreciate Ms. Maroon's frustration with the agenda, and it's one that I'm frustrated with as well. It doesn't. I've taken efforts in the past to have items added to the agenda, and typically I'm rebuffed in my efforts. The agenda right now, as I understand it, it is set by the county clerk in working with Mr. McLean. Is that the process? Is that not how it operates?
Now, the people that want things placed on the agenda submit an agenda item request to the executive director who collects them. Under the county code, I set the agenda. She sends them to me. I review them. I discuss them with her, and they go on. But when you say you've been rebuffed, Mr. Zidek, I don't recall what you've been rebuffed about. You know, you did not come to me and ask that this be placed on the agenda today.
I could give you specifics, but I'm not sure it'd be useful. The county code, section 654, states the proposed agenda for any meeting of the council shall be prepared by the county clerk in consultation with the chairman or a councilmatic committee created for that purpose. So one solution perhaps to this going forward would be to create a councilmatic committee to set the agenda, and we could avoid surprises or the necessity of raising things at the last second. So
Board members could simply make the request before Monday, you know, before the last minute. I mean, I realize some of the items that you have wanted to raise, you do so for not governance purposes, but political purposes to launch an attack. And that's the reason that they've done that. I would invite anybody. I have not. Mr. Madden asked me on Monday, could we specifically make this a point today? And I've done that.
Well, you can ascribe whatever motives you believe sit behind my actions. When I sought to bring forth a motion simply to put something out to bid that had not been put out to bid, you refused to put it on the agenda. If you want to say that's a political attack, I think it's just good governance to put things out to bid. But in any case, rather than point fingers, perhaps today we could move forward with creating this councilmatic committee to create the agenda so that there is a better process and fewer surprises may be had. So we can raise that after we deal with the current resolution. I'll make another motion once we resolve this.
Any further discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. No, sir.